Welcome back to another episode of the Celtic Whiskey Pod with me, your host, Al Higgins. Last week I was fortunate enough to attend a special tasting event of the new whiskies from the O'Shaughnessy Distillery Company, who are based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. An American distillery which of course is headed by an Irishman and former Middleton master distiller, Brian Nation. It was a great night, and it was also clear from the attendees in the venue that there was a lot of curiosity about Brian's new venture and the first whiskey releases from them. The next day, I was able to catch up with Brian and Patrick O'Shaughnessy in the Celtic Whiskey Shop, which is where we recorded this episode. Most of you will be familiar with Brian's background, but if you are not, you should know that he was master distiller at Middleton during one of the most important phases of the company's history, as it saw a boom in sales of its core brand Jameson, a renewed interest in the single pot still category, and also in super premium whiskies such as Middleton Very Rare. I'll let Brian and Patrick explain how they ended up working together, listen on to hear about that, and also to find out about their innovative new whiskies that are fittingly including both American and Irish whiskies in the blends. Now, unfortunately, we were very tight on time, and like I said, we had to record in the shop on Dawson Street, so while it may not be the best audio quality, it does kind of add an air of authenticity to the conversation. Hope you enjoy it. Cheers for now. Bye.
You're listening to the Celtic Whiskey Pod, the home of unchill-filtered conversation.
A very warm welcome to Brian Nation and Patrick O'Shaughnessy from O'Shaughnessy Distilling Company, Minnesota. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're traveling around Ireland like rock stars from one date to the next, putting on a show every night.
Legendary status right out of
Yeah. Well, I got to do a good intro. We're here recording in the Celtic Whiskey Shop, so there's a bit of background noise, but that all adds to the atmosphere. And we had an excellent tasting last night in Lost Lane, which, despite the football and other things, it was very well attended, and well done on the tasting. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us. Great to be at the Celtic Whiskey Shop with you.
It's really good to see you back in Ireland. And
Great to be back, to be fair.
you're coming back soon. We'll maybe mention that at the end for Whiskey Live. We've got something to talk about there.
To attending Whiskey Live during May, and we're actually doing a masterclass in Keeper's Heart on May 19th on Friday between 2 and 3. So looking forward to doing that and sharing the story of Keeper's Heart with as many people as possible.
Well, speaking of the story, let's go and let's hear about it, because you had a very good way of telling everyone how it all happened at the tasting last night. First of all, how did you come to moving across the water? What was the first point of contact, and how did it all pan out?
Well, I think the first point of contact was, would you believe it, through a LinkedIn message, and I leave Patrick kind of kick in here and tell that side of the story. But it really was almost, something that has completely shocked me. If somebody said to me in 2018 that I would have up sticks, left Irish Distillers, brought my wife and kids to the beautiful weather of Minnesota, I'd have told them they were mad. But that's what's happened. But when you get to hear Patrick O'Shaughnessy, you'll understand why.
For us, we Irish family originally living over in America today, but back in the home country from Galway, Gort. Family came over during the latter part of the potato famine, looking for a better opportunity, and like all families, just trying to stay connected, kind of share our lives with each other. And we're kicking back at every 5-year family reunion. It's getting a little late night. What are we doing? We're taking back some Irish whiskey, and of course, all the big decisions, all the good ideas come out late in the night with a wee bit dram, and just started to have this idea that we could maybe get into the whiskey business. We kind of just came to understand the really iconic past as a kind of an icon of in the lexicon of whiskey that the Irish whiskey as a community has had, dating back to kind of pre-prohibition, 80% of all the whiskey in the world. And of course there's a true renaissance, and we just wanted to be a part of that journey. And so as Brian said, we found a way to reach out to Brian through LinkedIn, and to my shock and surprise, he reached back, and we just started a great conversation that continued to evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, it did start with a LinkedIn message, but then it followed on with a phone conversation. And that phone conversation sparked a little bit of interest, I'll say, but still not enough interest for me to come off the phone and say, oh yeah, I definitely want to do this. But Patrick said at the end of the call we'd see each other in 3 months, would I meet him for a drink? And I said, of course I would. But that quickly changed from 3 months to 2 days. When I came off the call, I got a text message to say it's actually we'll be in Ireland in 2 days, will you meet me? So that was kind of, wow, alright, okay, we will. And then I was asked to bring my wife, who at this stage was thinking I was absolutely mad having any conversation with anybody else to do with another distillery, because simply, there was no way I was going to leave Irish Distillers or even attempt to leave Ireland. Because I was born and reared in Cork, never lived outside of Cork, so it really was going to be a big, massive move for me. But then we met them, and we met Patrick, we met Michael, and we met Michael's father, Jerry. And to be honest with you hear about these kind of cliched moments always, it was instant connection. But this genuinely was a connection where we didn't speak about whiskey. It was the most comfortable I ever felt in talking to people that we'd never met before in a very, very short space of time. And it ended up being a 5.5 hour meal. So much so that when we left, my wife said to me, if we had no kids in the morning, I would move to Minneapolis. So that was
Excellent.
a big turnaround.
You got the approval straight away.
Exactly,
so yeah.
exactly.
And then it was full steam ahead until the pandemic. So you were all set to go, and you were sat still in Cork with a bunch of sample bottles, I believe.
Yeah. So when basically in July 2020, I left Irish Distillers, and at that stage the pandemic was in full swing. So we actually couldn't move. We couldn't move from Ireland to the US. Because there was a risk that we wouldn't be able to get back, or we actually weren't even able to get into the US because we didn't have our proper visas. So I worked from home for 12 months, and between July 2020 and January 2021, there was lots of different prototypes put together, starting off between 130 and 140 different prototypes of the blend, which basically needed to be whittled down over time in order to be happy that we're getting that perfect balance of Irish and American whiskey influences. So I was concerned about that simply because it was all Irish palates were actually whittling down prototypes. And my concern was we were going over to the US.
Yeah.
That was going to be our first market. It's also going to be our biggest market. So what if the American palate was that much different from the Irish palate that it wouldn't be accepted, or it wouldn't be
Absolutely,
liked? So by January 2021, I had the ability to travel, and David Perkins, who was the founder of High West Distillery, and really a maverick of American whiskey, and really the guy to push the boundaries of American whiskey blending, actually had come on board as a liquid collaborator and investor. And I knew David for years, so it was great for him and others in America to start tasting the blends and bringing the level of prototypes down as well. And ultimately we got to 2 final prototypes in April, and we brought the whole team together in the Ewing Hotel to actually make a decision on the final prototype, and I'll leave Patrick take it away from there.
Well, that was the biggest part of the Ewing Hotel had seen. We were in the lobby as a whole team, and there was kind of crazy night. The curfew happened, so we got totally locked in. They pushed us up to the rooftop bar. Brian's got graduated cylinders. There's a mad scientist vibe going on here. And then they decided to literally open the rooftop spa, and now there's people in robes. I mean, literally, it was like a surreal experience. But as Brian said, we were all there together. Everybody was a part of the process, and it just felt right. We came out of there just thrilled, and that just kind of was the kickoff moment for us.
So that was you refining and defining the 2 whiskies that we tasted last night. And they've been released in Ireland now, which is great to see. Talk to me a little bit about your process of putting them together, because you went into quite a lot of detail last night. The styles of whiskey could be quite different to balance, when you're talking about pot still and rye and everything.
Absolutely. And I suppose from the outset we gave ourselves 3 objectives, right? And number 1, the objective was to create a great tasting whiskey. Sounds like a no-brainer, but you have to start somewhere. Number 2 was the components that go into putting the whiskey together. that they all played a part in developing the overall flavour, complexity and balance of the whiskey. And then number 3 was versatility, because you know better than us that if you see the way people enjoy whiskey nowadays compared to 10, 15 years ago, the landscape has changed dramatically. The demographic has changed dramatically. So gone is the day where people only enjoy their whiskey neat or on the rocks. They now like to experiment more with it and do something, you know, in cocktails or be it in long drinks or whatever. So if you want to be a successful brand, you need to be successfully playing all of those things. So they were very much at the forefront of our minds when we were putting the whiskies together. And the process then began by looking at, my initial idea was that it would be a pot still and a rye, or a pot still and a bourbon. But I couldn't get the proportions to coexist, or the 2 whiskies to coexist, no matter what proportions you put together. And this was a big learning one for me, because I would have thought that the rye or the bourbon would always outshine the pot still in certain proportions, but that wasn't the case. The pot still was taken over, the rye was taken over, or vice versa. And it was only the introduction of a small amount of grain whiskey that actually allowed the 2 powerhouses to kind of coexist and overall develop on the overall balance, flavour and complexity of the whiskey. So that was a big learning opportunity, and I think appreciating the components and appreciating what each component was bringing to the whiskey was also part of the process that we used when we had our whole team be involved in the final decision on the two prototypes, because that in itself gives you the knowledge and gives you the understanding of what each whiskey is bringing to the party, and I think that in itself was very, very important.
Yeah, and how did they go down in America? You know, because you talked about the possibility of your Irish palate not necessarily being a hit over there. So what's the reaction been like so far?
So far it's been fantastic. We initially thought we would actually release in 5 states in the US in the first year. We actually released in 18 states in the US. So that in itself was a big deal for us. It also turned out that in 2022 we were the most awarded new whiskey, which again was a fantastic achievement for our team.
Yeah.
And also in terms of its growth in year 1, it's probably the fastest growing craft whiskey for the last 25 years. So that's something that, you know, we didn't expect. We knew we had a good whiskey, but we didn't expect that there would be that quick of an uptake of the whiskey and that much love for it. But there has been. And even now, since we've come to Ireland and actually started releasing in Ireland, any of the tastings we've done and people have got the opportunity to have a glass in hand and taste it, really, really are blown away by the extra dimension of flavour, taste and aroma that you get from combining the 2 whiskies, the 2 styles of whiskey.
Yeah, and they are very interesting. I do like the fact that you can pick out each component. The thing is, you we tasted them last night. You don't necessarily pick out the grain component, but you notice the pot still, and you notice the rye on the first one we tried, and then you notice the pot still and the bourbon, and very interesting in that they do cross over perfectly.
They do, and an interesting point here about you don't really get the influence of the grain whiskey, or you don't get a lot of the impact of grain whiskey. I get more of the impact of the grain whiskey on the Irish plus bourbon, but you know, the amounts of grain whiskey in each of the blends are relatively small, so you're not getting a massive influence. It was really there in order to make sure that the other 2 components, which were the rich pot still and the bold bourbon or the spicy rye, were able to actually coexist, and that's the real impact of the grain whiskey.
So tell us about your trip to Ireland. This is obviously the launch of Keeper's Heart in Ireland, and you're being distributed by Barry Fitzwilliam, and you mentioned last night you're eventually going to have a dedicated rep for the brand in Ireland, which is a big step. That's a big investment, isn't it?
It is a big investment, but like, we're serious about launching in Ireland, and we feel that, you know, we want to give Barry Fitzwilliam as much help as they possibly can to ensure that we see the growth of Keeper's Heart Irish plus American whiskey here. So we're very interested in putting somebody, the right person, in the market to make sure that they can build the advocacy, be it in off licenses, be it in fantastic whiskey shops like this, but also in the on-premise to try and
Oh,
build
absolutely.
the advocacy and drive people towards Keeper's Hat as making it a drink of choice.
Yeah, I think, tasting it last night, that is where you're going to probably see the most success is in behind the bars, especially the better cocktail bars where they make a really, kick-ass Manhattan and things like that. Who doesn't like a really well-made Manhattan with a good whiskey?
And then the itinerary, Patrick put the itinerary together, so he made sure we had no moment to spare. So I'll let Patrick take you through the itinerary for the week.
It was almost 2
Up
weeks,
and down,
so that was
across.
I only had a 1 week itinerary plan. Brian added the second because he wanted to say hello to all of his friends.
All right, yeah.
But, we're having good fun around the country of Ireland. So we're on our way to Galway and Killarney, and of course you have to stop back through Cork because a lot of Brian's friends are down in Cork, and
of course,
we had a good time last time we were in Cork, so we're going to do it again.
And have there been any surprises along the way? For you, particularly Patrick, coming back to Ireland, you've probably seen a few places you haven't been to before on this trip.
I've certainly seen some new places, and mostly the discovery of kind of the small, pub culture all around Ireland is super exciting. I think what's amazing to me and surprising is, as Brian said, I think we knew we've got a great whiskey here. We're super excited how it's being received in America. But it was also, just like that was a nerve-wracking, nail-biting moment coming back to Ireland and figuring out how will the Irish feel about the inclusion of bourbon or rye in a blend was something that we just weren't quite sure. And we've gotten such a warm welcome from both influencers and the media and folks behind the bar. It's just really great to see, and it's off to a great start.
Yeah. The future of your company and whiskey, because you guys are doing something that hasn't necessarily not been done before, because we did talk last night about there was a one-off William Jameson whiskey blended with bourbon way back in the pre-war years, which was called Irish American, I think, was it at the time?
It was.
And,
William Jameson Irish American.
But we're seeing across the whiskey world some sort of blurring of the boundaries, where people are picking up on different styles. The other companies doing pot still whiskey in America. What's the future of O'Shaughnessy distilling when you actually become at that stage where you can release your own liquid from your own distillery?
Yeah, well, one of the, as I said, the whiskies that are out at the moment are all sourced whiskies. The Irish whiskey sourced from Great Northern Distillery and the American whiskey sourced from MGP in Indiana. At the distillery itself, we're actually laying down stocks of American whiskey distilled in the Irish style of triple copper pot distillation. So we're actually producing an American single pot still. We're producing a triple pot distilled rye and a triple pot distilled bourbon. They're all American whiskies, but they have that use of the pot distillation and the triple pot distillation that will bring its own different flavour and different delivery of overall complexity and balance to a whiskey. We're also maturing using virgin American oak, so the American single pot still will actually be matured in virgin American oak, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And we've had to create a heavier style of pot distillate in order for it to be able to match against the virgin American oak, and that's been an interesting trial. But to see that progressing at the moment, we're really excited to see the way it's maturing. And then in relation to the American rye and the bourbon, they're American style insofar as they're a rye and a bourbon, and they follow all of the TTB requirements, but they're triple pot distilled, so that in itself will give them a different taste profile. So I think by 2027 you're going to have 5 unique whiskies on the market that really are pushing the boundaries of innovation, and also taking the best of different distilling traditions and styles and showcasing what can be done to, you're calling about blurring the lines, but it's not so much a blurring of the lines, because we know we're still making American whiskey. We're not pretending to be making Irish whiskey in America. We're actually making American whiskey, but we're just using that traditional style of triple pot distillation to make it.
Yeah, and you're not just using virgin oak. You have like everyone else, I suppose, these days, you have to have a whole inventory of different cask types, and they're there to add some sort of exclusivity to the product, and have some.
And we're doing that in a couple of ways. So for the Keeper's Heart Irish plus American blend, we're actually doing some different finishes on that, and have single barrels to really keep the DNA of Keeper's Heart, but enhance it with some different flavors like stout, maple syrup, sauternes, Madeira, lots of different types of barrels. But then on the other side, we're also looking at, for our distillate that we're laying down, we're using refill barrels. And it was very interesting, big learning for me was that when you make a rye, you use virgin American oak barrels. If you do the exact same process the whole way through, but you put it into a refill barrel, you can only call it whiskey made from a rye mash bill.
Yeah.
Which it sounds different, but it's still the same mash bill.
I think refill barrels get a bad rap because if you're doing extended aging for a whiskey, like my favorite cask type is a refill sherry.
Yeah,
I think if you could get a refill sherry at 15 years old, you're in heaven.
It really is.
And virgin oak is tricky. Like you can get some harshness from them, and yeah.
And it's all around the timing. It's all around the quality of the barrels. It's all around the level of char. You've got lots of things to think about. But it's the same with any wood management program. As long as you've got a good quality control around the barrels that are coming in and the management of them, and ensuring that they're to the specification you want, I think you can more or less, if you get your distillate right, if you get your maturation conditions right, and if you get your barrel design right, and your barrel type and quality control program right, then you're going to create a great whiskey.
We saw some photographs last night of the distillery, and I think when you first opened, I was on your website, and there was this amazing drone footage. That was a work of art in itself. There was one of these incredible drone journeys through the distillery, and as the drone got to a different person, they were all doing something different. I can only imagine it was like trying to shoot a feature film to make sure everyone was in their station.
Yeah, it wasn't one take. But the actual drone footage, just so that you know, that was one take. It was amazing. It really, really was. Do you want to talk about the distillery?
Well, first we've got to give a shout out to the drone maker. Jaybird Films just rocked it, and he's become literally an international sensation. There were a few pieces he did that literally put him into movie studios. He's now all around the world. We're actually getting ready to announce a new partnership on the whiskey front in a sports franchise over in Minnesota. I think we're allowed to say it's going live right now, which is a partnership with the Minnesota Twins. And the last sponsor for the Twins was Jack Daniels. A little bit of a coup to kind of...
All right, pulling the rug from under them.
On Jack Daniels. Sorry, Jack Daniels. But he's going to be shooting that again. And then ultimately, he's going to be shooting kind of the stadium and that whole announcement release. But yeah, we're super excited about the facility. We had a great design team, and they really focused on spaces that brought people together. There's a nice lounge, there's whiskey education, there's a tasting room. It's designed to create kind of a home, like you're kind of the guest is an extension of our family, the team family, and so it's a warm, inviting atmosphere. And if the Irish folks here aren't afraid of a little bit of snow, come visit us.
That's exactly what you said there. That's the way I kind of viewed it when I saw the photographs. It looks like the kind of place you just want to hang out in. It doesn't look. Some distilleries are you go in the door, you're rushed through, and then you have a tasting, and then you're kicked out. But I'd like to hang out there and just sit on the sofas and have a cocktail.
You see that when people come and visit, is that they find it hard to leave the place because there's such it's a great, comfortable cocktail bars. There's some fantastic food, and there's some amazing cocktails. So it really is the perfect destination area, So if you are in Minneapolis, please come visit us.
Look them up in Minneapolis. Yeah, it's not that cold in the winter, is it?
Not in the according to Patrick O'Shaughnessy, it's not.
Global warming is coming to Minnesota.
But you get better summers than us here.
Absolutely, for 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
In fairness to Minnesota, this isn't even for the distillery, but just to defend Minnesota, we have beautiful summers, and we're a lake-filled, state. They call it the land of 10,000 lakes. So
currently all frozen.
But Brian is going to learn to ice fish, so it's fine. Don't feel too bad for him.
So the future looks bright. Are there any sort of other future plans you can talk about? Obviously, we'll be a few years down the road before we see your own liquid.
Exactly. So the earliest that we'll see our own liquid come will be probably late 24, early 2025. But in the meantime, we're always looking at kind of different innovative ways of producing different distillate styles. I think there was a question asked last night. The current pot still mash bill that we're using, is it all just malted barley and unmalted barley? It currently is.
Yeah.
But we will look at doing something with additional adjuncts in there to create a different taste profile.
Yeah.
And there's always something. We're looking for different style barrels to do some finishing. We're also looking at different type barrels for finishing of the new distillate as well that we're producing. So there's always something going on.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to the moment when you finally release Brian Nation's whiskey.
Keeper's Heart.
Yeah. With your signature on it. We were signing away bottles last night. I'd say you got sore hand after.
Repetitive strain injury.
Yeah.
It was great, and we're so appreciative of the amount of people that came last night. It's really showing the interest in what we're doing. To Patrick's point, we've done this a lot throughout the States in the US where we've been talking about the whiskey. I have never been so nervous about talking about the brand since I came here, because coming back home, lots of people have known me for being involved with the brands that I was involved with, but now to come here with a brand that we're building from the ground up, you're always wondering and you're always concerned, what are people going to think? And so far the reaction has been great.
Yeah. Being a musician, that kind of resonates with me, and it's like forming a new band. You guys are the new band and no one's heard you yet. And you're doing your first gigs in Ireland.
Yeah. It is. It's like that, and it's absolutely. Let's hope we get some
hit songs.
Or some encores.
So we mentioned at the start, you are coming back.
Yes.
So Whiskey Live is on in May, and it's the 20th, sort of 19th and 20th of May, and you guys are doing the masterclass on the 19th.
Yes.
So people can buy tickets for that at whiskylivedublin.com, and they are €10 each. But they also need to have a general admission ticket, so they're available to buy now. It's for the Friday afternoon session at 2 p.m. So
really looking forward to that, and really sharing the story of the whiskey and of the journey and of what's next to come. So hopefully to see lots of people there.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. And anyone that's listening, get one of those tickets, because it was great to hear you last night and taste the whiskies. It's the whole package. So are you coming over as well, Patrick?
I hope so. I hope my wife is not listening.
All right.
It's a long trip. I think she might need a break, so we'll see. I'd love to be here.
You could bring her as well.
Exactly. And our 2 kids who are still in school, but maybe online school.
Well, I wish you all the best for the future, and it's going to be a very interesting journey to watch how the whiskey brand goes through Ireland, and look forward to seeing you at Whiskey Live as well. I'm definitely going to be there. So thanks for talking to me. I know your schedule's been really busy, so I really appreciate you talking to me.
Cheers. We wouldn't miss it. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, thank
Bye.
you.
You're listening to the Celtic Whiskey Pod, the home of unchill filtered conversation.
Thanks to Patrick, Brian, and indeed the whole team at O'Shaughnessy Distillery for taking the time to visit us. Brian and perhaps Patrick will be back for Whiskey Live, and if you're going, then be sure to pick up a ticket for the masterclass. Just go to whiskylivedublin.com, that's whiskey with the E, and you will find the Keeper's Heart Masterclass on the Masterclass page with a link to the purchasing site on universe.com. Note that you do also require a general admission ticket for the Friday to attend the masterclass. We of course stock the 2 Keeper's Heart whiskies in the shop. Like Brian mentioned, the Irish plus American is a blend of pot still, grain and rye whiskies, whilst the Irish plus Bourbon is a blend of pot still, grain and bourbon whiskies. They are both available at a very reasonable €50 per bottle. Just go to CelticWhiskeyShop.com and search for Keeper or Heart, and they should pop up for you. That's all from me. Look out for another episode coming soon. Sláinte and bye for now.